They say kids don't lie, but that's not true here. Here, in this windowless room, with its pastel-painted walls and foam corners, the lies sound like forgotten truths. The lights buzz faintly overhead, flickering in ways you only notice when the rest of the world goes quiet. There's a kind of heaviness in pediatric psych at night, like even the air wants to rest but isn't allowed. The chairs are too small for adults, the tables too cheerful for what gets whispered at them. Every toy feels out of place, like something's watching through the plastic eyes. I'm Camille, I'm 39, and I've been a pediatric psychiatric nurse for 15 years. I used to be good at compartmentalizing. I thought I could leave work at work, keep the sadness and strangeness in its own locked drawer, but something shifted with her. I started carrying her voice home, even when she wasn't speaking. I think a part of me still does. Her name was Lacey, 6 years old, light brown hair that curled at the ends like it wasn't sure what it wanted to be. She arrived after a foster breakdown. No records from before that, except vague mentions of ritualistic behaviors and advanced mimicry, which sounds like a party trick until you hear your dead mother's voice come out of a first grader. The first few days were uneventful. Lacey was quiet, cooperative. She rarely spoke unless spoken to, and even then she'd answer in short, polite sentences, too polite. The kind of politeness that feels practiced, like someone taught her how to pass as normal. She made eye contact, which is rare in kids who've been through trauma, but it didn't feel like eye contact. It felt like she was looking through you, past you, somewhere you didn't want her to see. The first time it happened, I was alone with her in the observation room, doing routine check-ins, just conversation. How are you feeling? What did you dream? Any nightmares? That kind of thing. I asked if she missed her foster mom. She didn't answer, just stared at the floor, her hands folded in her lap. I was about to move on when she looked up at me and said in a voice that didn't belong to her, "Don't forget to pick up milk." My throat closed up. That was something my mother used to say. The exact tone, the exact timing. She used to remind me over the phone on Fridays, right before her memory started going. "Excuse me," I asked. Lacey blinked, smiled softly. "Nothing," she said, in her own voice this time. It rattled me, but I brushed it off. Coincidence. Maybe I'd said that aloud once. Maybe she overheard. Kids have sharper ears than we give them credit for. But then came the second voice, then the third. Over the next week, she began mimicking staff. Not in a mocking way. She'd simply speak in their voices, sometimes when they weren't around. She once asked for water using Dr. Sandhu's voice, down to the cadence and pause he made when thinking. Another time, she called my name like my late grandmother used to, soft, slow, with a hint of disapproval. My grandmother had been dead for 7 years. I reported it, of course. Audio hallucinations, learned behavior, advanced echolalia. There were clinical explanations. We increased observations. Put her on the list for a neurological consult. But nothing explained what she said to me on the 11th night. She'd been quieter than usual, wouldn't touch her food, sat by the window, which didn't actually open, just stared at the reflection of the room behind her. I went in to sit with her. No questions, just presence. That's when she said it. "Do you remember the lake house, Camille?" I froze. The lake house had been our family's secret place growing up. My mother and I were the only ones who used it regularly. It had burned down when I was 19. Lacey turned to face me, still staring. Her eyes were too still. Her voice changed, not just pitch, but rhythm, emotion. It wasn't just mimicry, it was inhabitation. You cried when you dropped the cake, but I told you it didn't matter. We still sang anyway. I felt my knees go weak. That memory was from my 7th birthday. I'd never told anyone about it. Not my ex, not my therapist. Certainly not in this building. "How do you know that?" I whispered. Lacey blinked. Her mouth twitched, something between a smile and a flinch. "She says you never listened," she said, and then she screamed. Loud, feral, cracking the air. Staff rushed in. Restraints were gently applied. She fought, not violently, but with precision, like she knew exactly how to resist without causing injury. And all the while, she laughed in my mother's voice. They sedated her. She didn't speak again for 3 days. I stopped doing night shifts, switched to admin for a while. I told myself it was burnout, but the truth is, I was afraid of a 6-year-old, not because of what she did, but because she spoke pieces of my life that I had buried and mourned. Eventually, Lacey was transferred to another facility, higher security. I wasn't told where, no one was. I went back to work. The walls were still pastel, the toys still stared, but I'd stopped listening for truth in the voices. I'd started listening for memory. A month later, I got a phone call from an unknown number. I didn't answer. The voicemail was 12 seconds long, no words, just the sound of someone humming, a tune I hadn't heard since I was a child, the birthday song, out of key, like it always was when my mother sang it. I don't know who called. I deleted the message, but sometimes when I walk past the observation room, I still hear it echoing, not aloud, just there, like the air remembers. I told no one. This is the first time I've said it. Some nights I still hear her calling my name, not Lacey, my mother, and the voice never quite fades. The mirrors are still there, cracked in places, grimed around the edges, some clouded with age, so badly that your reflection looks like a memory you're trying to forget, but they still hang, wall to wall, in the old therapy room in the East Wing. No one uses that room anymore. It's always cold in there, no matter the season, always just a little too dark. You walk in and you feel like you're being watched from a dozen different versions of yourself, all of them just slightly off. My name's Marlon. I'm 51. I've worked nights as a psychiatric nurse for almost 3 decades. That therapy room was part of a behavioral experiment years ago, mirror exposure for patients struggling with identity detachment. It didn't last long. One too many breakdowns, one too many wrong smiles. After that, they locked the doors and forgot the keys. But I never forgot what I saw in that room. I never forgot him. His name was Reggie. Late 20s, admitted for manic depressive episodes with dissociative features. On paper, nothing too rare. What made him different was the calm. He was never erratic, never loud, just quiet, too quiet, always watching himself in anything that reflected, windows, doorknobs, water in a glass, but especially mirrors. We started the sessions in the mirror room because Dr. Ellis thought it would be therapeutic, help Reggie reconnect with himself, confront the image, the dissonance. At first, it seemed to work. Reggie would sit on the bench, hands folded, gazing at his reflection like he was waiting for it to speak. He'd say things like, "I'm almost in sync," or "He's nearly here." We thought it was metaphor, but then the sync broke. It happened during the 4th week. I remember the time because I was staring at the clock above the door when he started humming, a low tuneless sound, like something between a lullaby and static. When I looked down at him, I noticed something that still churns my gut. He was humming, but his reflection wasn't. His lips were still, but the one in the mirror was grinning, a wide, crooked grin that didn't match the shape of his real mouth. I blinked, thought maybe I was tired, looked again, still wrong. I called his name. "Reggie?" He turned to me, slowly, as if surfacing from deep water, but his reflection didn't turn. It kept facing forward, kept grinning. That was the last session. Reggie was put on closer observation, but he stopped talking, stopped responding. The only thing he would do was smile, mimicking the grin from the mirror, as if trying to match it. Day after day, that smile stretched across his face, like a mask someone had stapled into place. Other staff started noticing small things. Mirrors in the bathroom fogged on the outside, light bulbs flickering only in rooms with reflective surfaces. One nurse said she caught her own reflection blinking out of sync. I laughed it off. We all did. But the laughter started sounding nervous. Then it stopped altogether. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday night. I remember it because the rain had smeared the windows so badly. Everything outside looked like it was melting. I was checking the East Wing, even though it was mostly disused by then. Just habit. That's when I saw him, Reggie, standing alone in the mirror room. The door was supposed to be locked. It wasn't. He was barefoot, wearing his patient gown, standing directly in front of the largest mirror. His arms were at his sides, his mouth closed, but the reflection, it was smiling, wide, hungry. I should have called for backup. I should have walked away, but I stepped into the room instead, like something pulled me forward, my heart pounding, air thick with silence. "Reggie," I said, "you're not supposed to be in here." He didn't move, not even a twitch. His reflection did. The mirrored version of Reggie raised a hand, palm outward, like it was pressing against the other side of the glass. Then it slowly started to smile wider, wider than a human mouth should. I grabbed Reggie's shoulder, and that's when he screamed, not in fear, in rage, a deep animal scream that cracked the air. He collapsed, shaking violently. We had to restrain him, sedate him. He didn't speak again after that. But later, when we reviewed the security footage, something wasn't right. The video showed me walking into the room, showed me reaching out to Reggie, showed him screaming and falling. But the mirrors? In the footage, they were black. No reflections. Not of me, not of him, just darkness. Reggie was transferred to a long-term facility. I don't know what happened to him. No one talks about him anymore. I started avoiding mirrors after that. Just little things at first. Shaving without looking, covering the bathroom mirror with a towel. But then I began noticing things I couldn't explain. Reflections that lagged by a half second. Eyes that seemed to look just past me. Once I saw my own mouth twitch into a smile when I knew I wasn't smiling. Now I keep all the mirrors in my apartment covered. I take my temperature with my eyes closed. I sleep facing the wall, because I've come to believe something I never wanted to say out loud. I think mirrors remember. I think sometimes they keep a version of us we didn't mean to leave behind. Or worse, someone else uses them to look through. I went back to the mirror room once, just once, to see if it was still there. It was, and so was the smile, not on my face, on the other side of the glass. It smiled first. The isolation rooms are at the end of the longest corridor in the sub-level ward. No windows, no clocks, just concrete, dim lights, and a silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels like it's waiting. Down there, even your own breath sounds wrong. There's a hum in the walls you stop hearing after a while, but it never actually stops. Most patients don't stay in those rooms long. They're meant for emergencies. But he stayed for 9 days. 9 days. And he never once opened his eyes. I'm Syra, 28. I've only been working in psychiatric care for 3 years. Night shifts mostly, because no one else wants them, and I don't mind the quiet. Or at least I didn't. I used to think the worst thing down here was loneliness, but after him I know there are worse things than being alone, like knowing something in the dark knows you. They brought him in after a violent outburst at another facility. The chart said he was non-verbal, catatonic, no name, no records, just a note scrawled in pencil at the bottom of the intake form. Do not speak to him, do not pray in his presence. We thought it was a bad joke. Nurses get jaded, sometimes dark, but no one ever admitted to writing it. He didn't have a name, so we gave him one, Ben. It felt easier that way. A name makes something human, even when everything else about it feels wrong. Ben didn't move, didn't speak. His body was frail, but not sickly, pale, almost waxy. He lay flat on the bed, arms at his sides, head facing straight up, eyes closed, always closed. But every time you entered that room, you felt seen. At first, it was small things. Feeling watched, the air feeling thicker. I'd walk into his room, and my skin would prickle like I'd walked under a static cloud. My thoughts would feel loud, too loud, like someone else could hear them bouncing around in my skull. One night, I brought in his medication. As I approached the bed, the lights flickered, just once. But in that flicker, I saw his lips move, not open, just twitch, like a smile forming underwater. Ben? I whispered before I could stop myself. Nothing. His chest rose and fell, slow and steady, but the air felt wrong, like I'd broken something invisible by saying his name out loud. That's when the dream started. I'd wake up gasping, convinced I had salt in my mouth. In the dream, I was standing at the foot of his bed, holding a handful of salt and murmuring words I didn't understand. Each time, he would open his eyes, but they weren't eyes, just black pits, like the sockets had been scooped clean. I stopped sleeping well. I started carrying cloves in my pocket. I don't know why. My grandmother used to say cloves kept spirits quiet. Maybe I just wanted the noise in my head to stop, The other nurses began to change too. Carter, our most seasoned night nurse, quit after 2 shifts with Ben. He wouldn't say why, just turned in his badge and left. Lina, our floor tech, started having nosebleeds every time she entered his room. She thought it was stress. I thought it was something else. The only person who kept going in willingly was Nassim, one of our newer interns. He said the patient reminded him of a distant uncle, also quiet, also strange. Nassim started bringing salt packets from the cafeteria, placing them just outside the door. When I asked him why, he looked at me and said, "Because it doesn't like salt." He just smiled. "You'll see." On the 5th night, the fire alarm went off. No smoke, no fire, just the alarm screaming through the halls. When we got to the panel, it read that the trigger had come from room 6, Ben's room. But when we entered, everything was as it had been, still, quiet, except for the salt line. It had been scattered. I asked security to check the footage. They said the feed from room 6 cut out between 2:12 and 2:18 a.m. No glitches anywhere else. Just 6 minutes of darkness. That's when we decided to move him. We called the higher-ups, said he needed more advanced care, possibly neurological eval. They agreed to a transfer, but it would take 2 more days. That night, Nassim didn't come in. He left a voicemail, his voice shaky, saying he was feeling watched even at home. He didn't return. I had to cover his rounds. That's when I did the one thing I shouldn't have. I said a prayer. I don't even know why. Maybe I was desperate. Maybe I felt sorry for him, for the thing that wore his shape. I stood just inside the door, hand gripping the lanyard around my neck, and whispered a simple verse, a comfort verse, a protection. Ben smiled, his lips peeled back slowly, dry skin cracking, teeth too many, too white, and though his eyes remained closed, I knew he was awake. The walls groaned, the light bulb above the bed shattered. I stumbled back, hit the call button. By the time help arrived, the smile was gone. The bulb replaced itself by morning. No one believed me. The transfer happened the next afternoon. 2 orderlies wheeled him out, strapped and still, like a mannequin in a morgue drawer. As they pushed him down the hallway, every door they passed opened slightly. No wind, no drafts, just quiet hinges creaking like they were acknowledging his passage. I never saw him again, but that night I found a note tucked in my locker, folded, unsigned. 1 sentence: "You shouldn't have prayed." Since then, I've kept salt in every room I work in, just a pinch, just in case. Sometimes I still feel him, not see, feel, when I walk into an empty room and the lights flicker, when the silence feels too heavy, when I start to whisper a prayer and catch myself. I never say his name out loud anymore, but I still dream about the black eyes and waking up with salt on my tongue. The geriatric wing is the quietest part of the hospital. It's not just the patients. They're mostly sedated, sleepy, waiting out days they don't know how to count anymore. It's the air itself, like it's older here, thicker, more tired. You walk down those halls and feel like you're being folded into something, slowly, gently, like dust settling on forgotten furniture. Room 207 is the last one on the left. The window in that room doesn't face anything, just a narrow gap and a crumbling brick wall, maybe 6 feet away. No sunlight ever really gets in, but patients say they see stars through it. Some say they see water. Others whisper about faces in the dark, eyes like stones, blinking too slowly to be real. I'm Elijah, 64. I've worked in maintenance and facilities here since the place was still called St. Joseph's Recovery Institute. That was 39 years ago. Back then, we used to open the windows for fresh air. Now we seal everything. Better for safety, better for not letting things out or in. Most of my job these days is fixing lights, unclogging drains, tightening old bolts no one else remembers. But I still walk the halls at night, especially this wing, especially 27. Not because I have to, but because I think someone needs to. She was one of the newer patients, Mrs. Winslow, 93, quiet, polite, always wore a blue cardigan like it was part of her skin. She started talking about the window on her second night. "Do you hear it breathing?" she asked. I thought she meant the radiator. No, she said, not the machine, the window. I nodded and changed the subject. Old minds wander, especially here. But when I came in the next evening to check the thermostat, I found her sitting in the chair by the window, staring at the brick wall with a smile that didn't quite touch her eyes. They talk to me, she said, but only when the lights are off. I told the nurse. She shrugged. Hallucinations, sundowning, textbook geriatric psych. But something about it didn't sit right. Mrs. Winslow didn't seem confused. She seemed convinced. That night, I did something I probably shouldn't have. After my rounds, I came back to 207 and stood outside her door. The light was off. I could hear her talking inside, soft, almost singing. I opened the door slowly. She didn't look at me, just kept staring out the window, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Rhythmic, ancient. Her hands were folded like she was in prayer. I stepped closer. That's when I noticed something. The brick wall outside. It wasn't there. Instead, I saw blackness. Deep, velvety dark, like the kind behind your eyes when you close them tight. But it wasn't empty. There were shapes in it. Faint, shifting, watching, pressed close to the glass from the other side. I blinked. The wall returned. Mrs. Winslow turned to me and smiled. They remember you. That night, I dreamed I was young again. Not the kind of dream where you see yourself, but the kind where you are yourself. Bare feet on pine floors, the smell of cigarette smoke in the curtains, my father's voice just out of reach. But the house was wrong. The walls breathed, the windows pulsed like veins, and when I looked out, I didn't see the street I grew up on. I saw the view from 27, only this time, the brick wall was gone, and the black space was closer. I woke up choking, the taste of dust in my mouth, like I'd bitten into an attic. I told myself it was stress, just a bad dream. But the next night, I found a drawing in the maintenance locker, a sketch done in blue crayon, wrinkled and smeared, stuffed between two old clipboards. It was a window, room 27's by the look of it, and in the glass, staring back, was a face that looked exactly like mine, only older. That morning, Mrs. Winslow died in her sleep. Peaceful, they said. No struggle, no signs of distress, just gone. When we came to clear the room, the nurse found dozens of small paper notes taped under the mattress, behind the mirror, inside the dresser drawers. Each one had the same sentence, written over and over. The window opens inward. I took a week off after that, thought about retiring, but I came back. Something about that room wouldn't leave me alone. I started checking it every night, just standing there in the dark, staring at the window. I never saw the brick wall again. Now I only see that blackness, closer sometimes, and I swear I've seen myself in it, not like a reflection, like someone standing on the other side of the glass, watching, waiting. He's always older than me, sometimes missing teeth, sometimes crying. Once he smiled. I keep thinking about what Mrs. Winslow said. They remember you. What if that's what the window shows? Not where you're going, but what you'll become, what you've forgotten, what you've left behind, that still remembers you. I nailed the window shut 2 nights ago. Not that it'll do much. It doesn't open that way. Not physically. But I hear it creak sometimes, like it's breathing again, like it's still watching. I'm not sure how much longer I'll be working. My hands shake more now. The sleep gets thinner. The dreams are harder to wake from. But I keep the key to 207 with me, just in case someone else starts hearing it breathe. Maybe one day, when I'm no longer able to fix things, I'll sit in that chair and see what waits for me on the other side. Maybe I already have. The courtyard behind the psychiatric wing isn't part of any tour. New staff don't even know how to get to it, unless someone shows them the old path, the one behind the laundry chute and past the rusted utility gate. You can tell it used to be pretty once. There's a crumbling stone bench and what might have been a fountain, now dry and filled with dead leaves. The ground is uneven, thick with ivy and thorny brush. Nobody tends it, yet something always grows. My name is Lydia. I'm 45. I've been a psychiatric nurse here for 19 years. long enough to know that certain places breathe differently. The courtyard is one of those places. It doesn't smell like soil, it smells like something waiting. There was a patient, years ago, Marianne, 19 years old, sweet but strange. Not the kind of strange that comes with schizophrenia or trauma, but the kind that made the other patients quiet when she passed, like they sensed something she carried with her, something old. She loved the garden. We never encouraged patients to go out there. It wasn't technically safe with all the broken stone and wild underbrush, but she insisted. Every afternoon at 2 p.m. sharp, she'd ask to go out, and we always let her. Not because of any rule, but because it felt wrong to say no. She never wandered, just sat in the same spot on the earth, never the bench, hands pressed flat against the dirt like she was listening for a heartbeat beneath it. She never spoke while she was out there, but sometimes her mouth would move, not in words, in chewing. I once joked about it to her, asked if she was eating her thoughts. She smiled and said no, just helping it grow. She'd been with us for 3 months when she began waking up with dirt under her fingernails. No explanation. Her bed was clean, her feet were clean, but there'd be soil in the creases of her hands, sometimes even in her hair. That's when I started watching her more closely. One morning, I followed her out to the courtyard. She didn't see me. She went to her usual spot, knelt down, and whispered something into the ground. Then she leaned forward and pressed her lips to the dirt. Not in prayer, in feeding. I stepped on a twig, and she turned, startled. But she didn't look ashamed, just calm. "It needs a part of us," she said. I asked what it was. She smiled. "The garden." That was the last time we spoke outside. A week later, she bit another patient during group therapy. Clean bite, drew blood. When I asked her why, she said, because he wouldn't give it willingly. We moved her to close watch. No more garden visits, no more group therapy. But the biting didn't stop. Staff, patients, it didn't matter. Small bites, like she was testing the taste of something. Then, one morning, she was gone. No signs of struggle. Door locked, windows sealed, no security footage, just her clothes folded neatly on the bed and a pile of teeth. Not dentures, teeth, human, real and old. Too many to have come from one mouth. No one claimed them. No records matched the dental profiles. We sent them for testing. They were all different ages. Some had cavities. One had gold filling. One was blackened like it had been burned. They were buried, not by us. The next week, ivy bloomed across the garden wall, thick, fast, unnatural. It covered the entire side of the building within days. I tried to forget her. We all did, but something changed in the hospital after she vanished. We began losing things. Small at first, keys, pens, clipboards, then bigger, patient records, old ID tags, an entire stretcher from the west stairwell. They all turned up in the garden, buried. We'd find them partially unearthed, poking through the soil like bones, clean, undamaged, like someone had placed them there with care. And then I had the dream. I was standing in the courtyard barefoot. The ivy was gone. The earth was fresh, rich, and breathing. Marianne was kneeling beside me, her mouth sewn shut with red thread. She handed me a spoon and pointed to the ground. I dug and found my name tag, still clipped to a uniform I didn't remember wearing. When I woke up, my fingernails were packed with soil. After that, I started tending the garden, not as a gardener, as a nurse. I began to understand. Something had taken root, and it remembered us. It wanted parts of us, not to harm, but to hold. It collected what we shed: buttons, hair, names, thoughts. One afternoon, I brought a candle and placed it near Marianne's spot. The air went still. The ground trembled faintly under my feet. I whispered, "What are you?" The wind carried back a single word: memory. That night, I returned with a trowel. I dug gently, carefully, near the place she used to sit. 6 inches down, I found something. Teeth. 6 of them. Still wet, still warm, arranged in a perfect circle like flower petals. They weren't hers. I would have known. These were new. I covered them up and left the garden, but I started hearing her voice again. Not in my head, in the vents, in the drip of the sink, in the rustling of leaves near the break room window. Always the same sentence. You left a part of yourself behind. I checked my drawer. My tag was there. My clothes intact. My hairbrush untouched. Then I looked at the group photo from my 10th work anniversary and saw that my smile was different. Wrong. A gap. A missing tooth. I ran to the mirror and confirmed it. Bottom row. Left side. Gone. Clean. I hadn't noticed until that moment. I hadn't felt the pain. It had been taken. Planted. I stopped tending the garden after that, but others have started. A new nurse waters the ivy now. Another leaves coins. Someone else placed a child's drawing under the stone bench. We never talk about it. We don't need to. We all feel it now, that pull, that weight of something buried and blooming, something that feeds on memory, on the pieces we don't even realize we're leaving behind, and it never forgets, not even the smallest part,